So one night we talking, and we got to talking about my man, my guy, Nikola Jokic. We got to talk about him winning a third straight MVP.
You were like, no, that's not correct. That's not what was in the past. And I was like, no, it's absolutely, like, this is what happened.
I don't talk like that.
I'm just saying.
Question.
Yes.
Can something be hard to watch if nobody watched it?
Don't try it, Mike. Don't try it.
Record low ratings for the All-Star game, so what y'all complaining about? Clearly y'all had better things to do anyway.
David Aldridge with the Athletic.
Mr. Aldridge,
Yes,
nice
sir.
to meet you.
Welcome to D.C., my man.
You know, look, Eric Bieniemy said, "It's nice to meet you, sir." Okay, he knew he was talking to a legend in David Aldridge.
I'm not going to talk about the Matt Rule era because he's almost like Candyman. We say his name too much, he's going to pop up on a podcast. Don't you say it. Don't you say it.
I get to see you, Dawn. I'm going to lob this over to you, Dawn. But real quick, my favorite thing about Dawn Capers right now is that he got the Beijing with the slip down going on. Okay, he looks fantastic, honey.
Man! Oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. I was going to say it's good to see you. It's good to see you. But before we see you, I'm sure we'll talk about that shirt, the man, the subject, the principal in that shirt a little bit. Mike Smith, what's up, man?
Good, man. Good to see you. Happy, a belated happy birthday to you yesterday.
Thank you.
You're back to 10 years older than me. Congratulations. You got a decade on me.
I am. And this is
that's why it's important to me.
No, it's still Black History Month. We're good. It's February. You know, you can ride this until August. You know, it's so funny. Yeah. Like, generally, we're on the air for my birthday. And then for some reason or another, we're off the air. You know, off days. We break. I don't know. Yeah. When your birthday comes around, it's a little quiet. You get a little quiet. And you know, you've gotten more quiet over the years. You used to be pretty loud about it. Get yourself a cake, throw a party, got the music, everything, you know. And now it's just, you just let it slide by. I wonder why that is.
I don't know. I focus more on the kids. Honestly, you know what it is more than anything? I'll say the last 10 years, what it is more than anything, why my birthday has been diminished in its importance. Not that I'm not thankful, as I know you are, for another trip around the sun. But Maya's birthday is, of course, July 31st. And so Maya's birthday is basically a 3-day event, if not longer. But it's July 30th, we start getting hype. Long before that, but really on July 30th. July 31st, of course, the big day. And then there's the carryover into August 1st. So my birthday has taken a back seat to my youngest child's birthday. So that's really what it's got to do the last 10 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's about the kids. And as you start to hit numbers that you're like, wait a minute, is that number real? Is that where I am right now? You can't play any more games anymore. It's not like, you tell people I'm 25,
but
I'm 28.
I tell you what, I wish I could say I put away childish things. Because I haven't.
Oh, we'll talk about that later, too. Because I got something. At number 10 in my feed item, we'll get to that. But I want to start here, man, because I missed so much time. You know, last week I missed you all. I really did miss you all. I wasn't watching y'all, but I was missing y'all, if that makes sense. Because I just need to take a little break. And this Natalie thing just intrigues me. So I know you got into it already with Natalie. I want to just revisit this again. Her issue with Nikola Jokic is that he can't win 3 straight MVPs because 3 straight MVPs is for somebody.
It's rare air. That's part of it.
But okay.
I'll try to speak for her. It's multifaceted. She's on vacation right now. I wonder if, unlike you, she's actually watching the show on vacation. We'll ask her later. But okay, so this is kind of like.
Go ahead. I'll take that. I'll take that smoke. That's fine. She probably is watching.
If I may speak for her, multifaceted. One, I think there's something about Nikola Jokic having not done anything in the playoffs, being in the same conversation when it comes to the history of the league as Larry Bird, Bill Russell, Will Chamberlain, as people who win 3 straight MVPs. That's part of it. Not a big part, but that's part of it. 2 is last year she can't get over the fact that Embiid should have won it last year. She thinks Embiid got robbed last year.
He got robbed?
3, yeah.
Okay.
3, and this is no particular order. 3, Tatum is her MVP this year, I believe. And slash, why is Nikola Jokic just runaway favorite down the stretch? Why did that recent straw poll have him getting 77 of 100 votes? And then last but not least, oh, this is the big one. This is the one that had us, carried a week's worth of conversation, is there's a double standard at play. Like the voter fatigue that has penalized previous 2-time winners like Giannis most recently does not seem to apply to Jokic this year. I think that about covers all her beef with the MVP.
Yeah, well, I would say this. Look, the MVP, if you're going to look at the regular season aspect of the award, and it is. It's a regular season award.
And it should factor in the postseason. That was the other part.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, that's too much. Okay, we can't do that. It's a regular season. It's a regular season award, and there is a postseason MVP, and it's biased too because your team has to be good enough to get to the finals. But your postseason MVP is the NBA Finals MVP, and so that rewards your work specifically in the NBA Finals. But sometimes I think it extends. It extends to your run through the playoffs. But most of the time, it's the NBA Finals, and that's just the way it goes. We're good with that. It's the award that it's the award that I value the most. If I had to pick, is it more impressive that Nikola Jokic has 2 MVPs in the regular season, possibly 3? Is that more impressive? Or is Cedric Maxwell and Chauncey Billups never regular season MVPs, but both finals MVPs? Is that more impressive? Yeah, I'd say finals MVP. That's just me. But anyway.
Well, it's because it goes with the championship. That's why. Like when you say it that way, it sounds crazy because it's like Cedric Maxwell, no disrespect, wasn't a better player than Nikola Jokic is.
He was not. And he would say that.
But it came with the championship, so it's more impressive to you because of what it represents. You were the best player on the biggest stage, which is the NBA Finals.
Yeah, and
more often than not. You may not be the best player in general, but for a 4, 5, 6, or 7 game stretch, you were the best player. But what I was saying is typically the best player in the world or the best player in the league ends up being finals MVP. That's the coronation process. Like Giannis was a 2-time MVP, and then he got finals MVP, and only then was he able to declare, and people started to call him the best player in the world. If I could pivot to, something else? Sorry.
Yeah. I just want to point out, and I want you to pivot, but I just want to just point this is for a conversation for another day, when Natalie is back here, and we can just do a little, just a conversation between all of us. I just want to point out that we just started counting championships now and penalizing those who don't have them. We just started because I mentioned the logo.
That is fundamentally untrue. That is fundamentally untrue. I'm going to let you finish, but that's fundamentally untrue. But continue.
All right. Well, by today's standards, if somebody tried to put the logo, if we could just time travel a little bit, I want to get back to that too. If we could time travel a little bit, and we're deciding on the NBA logo today, and somebody said, Jerry West. Let's put the silhouette of Jerry West up there. He'd be like, hey, he only won one championship. He only won one championship. Why not Bill Russell? Bill Russell, the Celtics beat them every time. Why are we doing this? And I'll go back to Wilt. 3 straight MVPs, to Natalie's point. Oh, well, he won 3 straight MVPs. Why should Jokic be on the level with Wilt Chamberlain? Well, Wilt Chamberlain and his 3 straight MVPs, he didn't win the championship every one of those years. As a matter of fact, people looked at Bill Russell and said, Bill Russell is the winner, and Chamberlain is the stat monster.
Right.
But they wasn't saying that in 1965, Mike. They weren't saying that about Wilt.
Well, they might have been saying it, but you had to read a newspaper to hear it, or they weren't tweeting it, or they weren't commenting on it. So it was being said, but it was like a tree falling in the forest because the only way we got our news was through dead trees. The reason I jumped in and said that's fundamentally untrue because we both remember Tragic Johnson. We both remember Michael Jordan being criticized for not being able to make his teammates better, only being able to get his. Will he ever win one? Which seems ridiculous. But once upon a time, it's like, damn, will Michael Jordan ever win a championship? Can he ever lead a team to a championship? There's obviously lots of players throughout NBA history who unfortunately were born in the time of Michael Jordan or Shaquille O'Neal, or you mentioned Bill Russell, who don't have a championship. The late, great Kobe Bryant, can he win a championship without Shaq? So the rings thing has taken on heightened importance, and it's fueled the player movement era. But people have always been criticized for lack of championships as individuals in a team sport, which brings me to my pivot. Some honors are intangible. And Damian Lillard will probably never be regular season MVP unless he leaves Portland, which doesn't seem to be the case, that he ever will. He'll never be finals MVP. But he's going to go down as an all-time great and an all-time favorite. He's already one of the greatest shooters of all time. I know Steph has that locked up, but Klay Thompson and Damian Lillard are right at that same table. It's not even like head of the table and everybody down. It's almost like Last Supper, if you want. Everybody all leaned in close to Steph Curry, or it's like a little small table in a restaurant where like we crowded around it, or we putting two tables together because Damian is not the all-time leading three-point shooter in NBA history, percentage-wise or makes. But he's as good as anybody at the three ball, specifically the long three ball. Klay Thompson just had his own performance a couple of nights ago to remind us how special he is, as if we forgot. But just to not take for granted, in an era when scoring has exploded, and Damian Lillard is the second person this season after Donovan Mitchell to have 71 points. And there have been a shit ton of 40-point games this year. But just for perspective's sake, not only was he the 8th player ever to score 70 points, Damian Lillard, last night, he did it in the way that nobody else ever has, okay? He went 13 of 22 from 3. 13 of 22, second most threes in the game behind the aforementioned Klay Thompson. First player in NBA history with 70 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 10 three-pointers made in a single game. He only shot 14 free throws. He only shot 14 free throws. And last but not least, he's now the oldest player ever to put up 70 points in the game. What made you smile?
I was going to say, I was laughing. Gary, just put that chart back up with all the scoring numbers.
All the wilts up there?
Okay.
Just wilt?
All the top 11. The top 11 scores, the performances in NBA history. And so
why do we go to 11?
Mike, I just want to point out.
Why do we do 11? Why didn't we go 10? Why didn't we go 12? Why did we go 11?
Because there's a tie. Because
I pump gas to even numbers. I put volume even numbers. That type of shit bothers me right there.
They're all at 71.
My temperature got to be 70 or 72, maybe. Can't be 11. That's weird to me.
You said.
But yeah, no, it's a hell of a lot of wilt up there.
You don't like odd numbers. You like even numbers?
Even numbers, round numbers, yeah.
Or is it okay? Well, this will help you out.
I'm not splashing. Yeah.
Okay, everybody on that list. Here's a common number: 0. In every year there wasn't no championships. Nobody won a championship that year, but that's still great. It's still greatness.
Right.
Nobody won.
Right.
Will didn't win in 62. Elgin didn't win in 60. David Robinson didn't win in 94.
It's a great observation.
So nobody. David Thompson in 78. They didn't win it.
That's a great observation.
So we can't.
Well,
it just can't. It can't be that. That can't be
Championships have never defined. Like when I argue Michael Jordan, I never bring up 6-0 ever. I never have. I never will. I mean, I
like that. You know what? I gotta admit this.
But I referenced it to make the point that I never bring that up. Yeah, right.
I do. I like that. I do. I like that you don't bring that up because that's one of the things. It's almost a conversation stopper, but not in a way that people want it to be. They think it's dropping the mic.
Right. It's not a mic drop. It's not.
It's not a mic drop.
It's overly simplistic. it's overly simplistic because I mean, like he went 6-0. I'll give you Magic going 5-4. Or how many has LeBron? With 10 finals for LeBron? I mean, it's just like, come on. But the championships for me, they're a factor, but they've never been the end-all, be-all. They've never been the thing to me that makes somebody better than another. It may be a tiebreaker. It may, maybe it's a matter of preference if you want to factor in the championships, but it's never been that thing that made me say, oh yeah, he's better because he won championships. So when it comes to Damian Lillard, who let's say, look, he'll be lucky to make the play-in this year. Doesn't seem to be a guy that wants to go and chase a championship somewhere else. I'm not just saying this as some kind of a slight to the players who have, because again, and we talked about this last week while you were out, a lot of the player movement era, we created this. We created this player movement era because we forced them to define themselves with championships. Whereas, like, if you stay in one city, like whether it's Damian Lillard, I know they're two different people, but similar type situations, Damian Lillard or Bradley Beal. If anything to you beyond a championship is important, if consistency or stability is important, then something wrong with you. But Damian Lillard doesn't get that smoke, though, and that's what's fascinating about Damian Lillard. He has a certain credibility, respect, and admiration. I guess the simplest way to put it, he's just a real one. So he's going to go down in NBA history as one of your favorite players, as an all-time favorite, a beloved player. He'll be at events at All-Star Weekend like Dominique Wilkins and Reggie Miller. He'll be one of those guys that it's like, unlike some other players. Because, I'll give you a contemporary example. I will give you a contemporary example. Okay. And maybe it's style of play, personality. I don't know what it is. But it doesn't seem like to me there are legacy conversations about Damian Lillard and his lack of rings in the same way that there are about Chris Paul, for example. Chris Paul not having a ring is a glaring omission and a slight to his resume, whereas I don't know that anybody sits around saying, man, Damian Lillard, he ain't got a championship. How good can he be? Right. It doesn't feel that way. I don't know if it's because he can rap. I don't know what it is. I don't know if but it's like, but nobody seems to get. But am I lying? I mean, I'm not reading everything on NBA Twitter. I'm not listening to everybody. So maybe I just missed it. It just doesn't seem like there's a level of criticism for him that there have been about other players on his level that have not either won a championship or left the team in search of a championship.
It's such a great point, Mike. And I know. And I have no problem with that, by the way. I have no problem with that. Yeah, right. I know Chris Paul is Players Association president, I know he's got standing. So this is going to sound weird because he's got the title of president. But if we were talking about a general election, basketball out of it, and you present these candidates, like Dame could be president. He just has a way where he doesn't.
Your favorite rapper's favorite rapper.
It doesn't annoy people. And Chris Paul has that little gene. He's got that little a-hole gene. He's got a little something. Sometimes when he walk on the court, he's looking around like he's trying to start something. He's trying to start something with somebody. Just the way he's looking. He got an edge. And Dame plays with an edge, plays with joy and dynamism and all that stuff, but he does it in a way where other players don't look at him and be like, look at this dude. Whereas Chris Paul gets that from a lot of people. And there are some fans, I'm surprised, there's some fans who look at Chris Paul and he's very polarizing. Now, I know when he was, when they were in the finals a couple years ago against the Bucks, I know you said, I'd love to see Chris Paul win. I'd love to see Chris Paul get a ring. There are a lot of people who are just the opposite of you. Like, I never want to see Chris Paul win. Because it's just something about Chris Paul. And Dame Lillard doesn't have that. I haven't.
People like him. People love him. People root for him.
There's really nothing to dislike about him. And I know NBA owners look at the Trailblazers and look at Lillard and say, that's what we want. He's not moving around. He's not asking to be traded. He's there in a small market.
And there are fans and media who are also respect Damian Lillard for not following that trend. They respect him for saying, you know what, I'm going to be the bus driver here. And if the bus driver, as they call it nowadays, the new thing is bus driver. If the bus don't get to that destination, then so be it, but I'm going to drive it wherever it goes. It's like there are a lot of fans in media and old heads who do appreciate that about him. And so, listen, if he never wins one, and his chances don't look good, I just don't think we're going to be sitting back putting an asterisk next to his career because he didn't get it. I tried to say this before about Kevin Durant. Damian Lillard has a certain, like Kevin Durant has won 2 championships and 2 finals MVPs. I know that was Steph's team. I know the Warriors were built around Steph Curry, but Kevin Durant takes a back seat to nobody. He rides nobody's coattails, okay? Kevin Durant has been in the conversation for best player in the league for a lot of years now. And some would say he has been the best player in the league. The world stops when Kevin Durant requests a trade. Kevin Durant is an all-time great player.
A lot of people
you know what I'm saying? But there is a respect and a credibility, not to say that Kevin Durant does not have respect. Let me make that clear. Kevin Durant has respect, but Damian Lillard has a different kind of respect than some people who have championships don't have. At least that's the way it feels. I'm strictly talking emotional. I'm not talking about aesthetics. I'm not talking about his style of play. I'm not talking about breaking down his game. I'm saying, like, I cuss a lot, but I ain't gonna cuss that hard. People F with Damian Lillard. I'll leave it at that.
Right.
People F with Damian Lillard. And last night was just an opportunity to give him his flowers once again.
And I know you said you don't think he's going to win the NBA championship. He's not going to have an opportunity to win the NBA Finals MVP.
Unless he leaves.
Do you look at the West? Do you look at the West right now? And I know we can bring it back to Jokic, and maybe this is Natalie's point. Hey, nobody's saying that Denver is unbeatable in the West. Well, which is true, but nobody's unbeatable in the West. Do you think is there an outside chance?
Are they in the play-in right now? Like the Lakers out here overcoming 27-point deficits. Hell, the Lakers I'm pretty sure they're like a game ahead of the Lakers or something like that. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Half a game ahead of the Lakers. I mean, they got to make the play-in first before they can make the playoffs, and then start talking about beating people who are beatable.
Hey,
so.
But look at this grouping here. They're only 2 games out of the 6th spot. 2 games out.
That's true. That math is mathing. You're right. That is true. So, yeah, if they get in there, I guess they can maybe make some noise. I don't know. Whatever Dame does is gravy at this point. You know, he wins the championship in Portland. That'd be one of the greatest stories in recent NBA history. But if he doesn't, it's not going to be held over his head. It just won't. Which I'm good with.
He needs somebody like Kang to say, time, I can give you that.
What are you going to do when you go back? Win.
Win.
He killed that. Jonathan Majors is that dude.
That's my dude. That is my dude.
Mike, you know, I'm never one to nitpick, but I would have rephrased this, that they're leaning toward trading the number 1 pick. They may want to trade the number 1 pick, but last I checked, a trade takes 2. And so somebody, I don't know, the Colts, has got to make them the kind of offer that would make it worthwhile to trade down from number 1. You understand what I'm saying? Like maybe the Colts are just saying, we'll sit tight. We'll make you take Jalen Carter, and we'll be satisfied with whoever we get. You know, because the Cardinals ain't taking a quarterback. So they're trying to drum up. They're trying to drum up interest is what they're doing. That's
they got leverage. I think they got leverage. This is brilliant on the part of Ryan Poles because you know if you're leaning toward it, you got at least 1 person or 2 on the hook, and maybe you want 3 or 4. So hey, we're leaning toward this. Somebody might jump in like, oh wait a minute.
But Charles, this is why it's like the smokescreen, silly season, whatever you want to call this time of year. It's like it's just so obvious because no shit you're leaning toward it. You got a quarterback already. They got teams that need a quarterback. It's like then here's another report, Charles. They're meeting with all the top quarterbacks at the combine. Well, you know what I call that? A waste of time. Because you got a guy and you ain't taking a guy. What's your read on all this stuff, Charles?
They're open. I mean, they're open for business. I mean, that's it. A lot of people are gonna write what they want to write right now, and some of it's going to seem obvious, but I had a chance to talk to someone from the franchise, and I think what's interesting is they're not just talking to quarterback needy teams. And
okay,
I think that like Detroit might be a team that's also spoken to them. I don't want to say, I will say this.
Whoa,
it's not like, here. Let me tell you.
That's our team. That's our
not,
team.
It's not just quarterback needy teams. It is teams that are in search of an elite player, and I think Jalen Carter is looked at as being an elite level player, and I think that what the Bears want to happen, and this was, I mean, is they put their cards on the table as much as you really could, is they want every quarterback to come and throw. Now, we'll see what happens with Bryce Young, but every other quarterback that's projected in the top 10 is going to throw right now.
Oh, God.
They want them all to come out, light it up. They want Carter to have a great combine. They basically want, great interviews. I think he's going to do most everything at Georgia's Pro Day. They basically want everybody to entice everyone in the top 6-7 picks. I think they would be happy if they stuck inside the top 6-7. So if you look inside the top 7,
because they got
I would
lot
say
of needs,
any of those 7 picks is that's a potential trade partner.
Hello? Yeah, this is Ryan. Who's this? Brad? Brad who? Brad Holmes? Listen, Detroit could want an elite player all they want. They got to find it somewhere else. I know Detroit traded T.J. Hockenson to Minnesota, so maybe these interdivisional trades, intradivisional trades are no big deal anymore. But when you got me at Detroit, you mean to tell me the Bears would allow Detroit to move up to number 1 no matter what they're paying?
Well, okay. Here. Let me tell you how Detroit is approaching this, though. This is kind of interesting.
Right.
I also had a chance to talk to somebody from Detroit's organization. They're like, we have 2 first-round picks on our roster from last draft. So if we're in a situation where we see a player and we have 2 first-round picks we're sitting on, and we think this is an all-pro level player, and this is a draft that's deep at tight end, okay, which is that's one way of saying it's not great. Okay, great. It's an awesome tight end draft. It's thin at the top elsewhere. Other than Robinson, the running back out of Texas, Jalen Carter out of UGA, Bryce Young. There's only really considered like elite level players, 1 or 2 at a few various positions. I think Carter absolutely could be a player that Detroit, if they felt like we can package.
It's just taboo. No, it's not that. No, that's not the part that trips me. It's just the it's taboo. It's just taboo for me.
No,
and maybe I'm old school. Yeah,
I don't think with draft picks. I don't think with draft picks. I think it's.
I know the Eagles did it with the Cowboys a couple of years ago with Devontae Smith.
I mean, listen, you were the one who broke Donovan McNabb getting traded from Philly to Washington. That happened inside the division, right? I mean, so it's not.
Don't remind me of that. Number 1, number 2. Donovan was at the end. Okay, but okay, maybe I'm making.
I was just trying to remind folks. That's all.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you.
I'm getting it. And Mike, this is hearing Charles say this just confirms it. I put in the feed that I'm starting to get the bug for franchise mode. I'm back in. Like, this stuff is great. The Bears at number 1. They're a team to franchise. I know you've already started. Don't lie on TV.
I have. You started. And there's so much work for them to do. Franchise mode sidebar is not as good as it was back in our days. They got so many things that they can improve upon, but nobody does. But you were saying, continue.
But I would say, I'm still getting the bug for it. And I want to say, Charles, because you alluded to it, talking about the Lions, they got that pick. I want to say shout out to Detroit, shout out to Seattle, and to Philadelphia. You look at those top 10 picks, and those teams have picks in the top 10 that don't belong to them. So, I mean, this is really a great year. This is a great follow-up. Okay, it's a great encore for general managers who did their work last spring. And they're reaping the benefits in 2023. Do you think all of them could be in play, not necessarily for number 1, but moving up even more? I mean, if you're Philadelphia, you're at 10, you just lost in the Super Bowl. You got a young roster, you got a young quarterback, you got some cap flexibility, extra draft picks. Same thing with Seattle. Do you see either of those 2 teams doing something?
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I think inside that top really 7, it's possible for any of those teams to move up to 1, either for the quarterback that they choose. Like, let's say Will Levis goes out and just blows it up, right? He's got the big arm. I think he's the one that really has the potential to tip the apple cart in terms of being the number 1 overall pick. I think if he comes out, shows the arm talent, sits through some interviews, and people sit there and go, his ceiling is higher than we thought because we think we can give him higher level coaching consistently. He's a worthy number 1 overall pick. I think that's the kind of thing that could shake up the top of the draft. But again, I'm telling you, Carter is the type of defensive player that I think teams that have an edge rusher, okay? It's very attractive thinking about pairing him, sitting him next to a dominant edge rusher. So Detroit, who really, not only they take Aiden Hutchinson, I mean, they found 2 edges this last season. I think it's very attractive to them to think if we could sit him next to Aiden Hutchinson, it would be.
It's about the Houston kid, Hutchinson, Houston, and Carter.
Aiden, Houston, Hutchinson, Houston, and Carter. I think there's an attractive edge to that. One other thing too that makes this really intriguing, and Michael Holley, you'll love this. The teams that have 2 first-round picks also, knowing what next year's draft looks like versus this year's draft, I think if they feel like they can get what they want with their first pick and they don't have to package 2 first-round picks to move up, I think all of those teams will entertain offloading that second number 1 overall for a 2024 first. Sort of Howie Roseman. Howie Roseman's always like, hey, if I've got 2 first-round picks, I can always trade that second for another first-round pick down the road and other assets. That's what he did this year. Remember, he had multiple first-round picks last year. He picked up an extra first-round pick this year by offloading one. Those teams will all consider that because next year, higher level, higher ceiling quarterback draft, Caleb Williams, Drake May, obviously, and then there will be other candidates that arise. If they can afford sliding a pick back, if they meet the need that they want or the player that they want with that first rounder, I think you could look at all 3 of those potentially looking at sliding that second first round pick for a future one if they can find someone who is looking for another first round pick.
Want to get into specific prospects in a second, but so the Packers coaching staff is not going, correct? Did I read that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Are there any other coaching staffs that are not attending the combine? And I just wonder, because Charles, I'll see you there, man. It'll be like old times. I just wonder how the combine, because in 2 ways. If I can combine 2 different subjects, but I know you can handle it. Culturally, the conversation around the combine, and whether it's antiquated, to put it lightly, when it comes to what these players, mostly black players, are exposed to when it comes to measurements and prodding and poking and prodding, putting on display half naked. The conversation we've been having for years, but it seems to have ratcheted up and reached the highest level of the league. Meanwhile, the usefulness of the actual combine. No, DeMaurice Smith was saying it's nothing other than just reducing people's value based on their medical information. But now you got coaches apparently thinking there's a better use of their time. So just the combine in 2023 in a nutshell, Charles.
I think it is. I think it's in the process of changing, and I think the pandemic had a lot to do with that. I think that you saw a number of players in those pandemic years who there was very limited workouts that happened. Obviously, the combine was erased, in effect, and you saw a lot of teams that continued to lean back on tape. What do we see on tape from these players? If anyone's telling you the truth, they'll just tell you, look, the medical is what's most important. I'll give you a good example. Kayvon Thibodeau last year. The medical was extremely important. The interviews were important, but I talked to at least one general manager. I don't want to get too specific how many general managers did this, but at least one general manager who did his interview over Zoom, like as in he wasn't in Indy, he was in on the interview, but he was on Zoom. So Thibodeau was sitting there with a room full of people plus the GM on Zoom. And the GM was like, I didn't need to be there for that, but I wanted to be in on the interview. So even that, the ability for Zoom and all these different things, it's changing whether or not staffs feel like they need to be there for a long time. I see general managers who are only popping in for a couple of days. Some, as you saw with the Packers, aren't sending coaching staffs. little aggressive, a little weird. But again, it all depends on how you feel your area scouts are doing. And then when it comes down to the measurables, I will say this about the measurables. The only thing that teams really use those measurables for is to categorize from a data set standpoint, where does this player fit in terms of the data sets we have on players in the past. So people always talk about, like, we talk about hand size, right? We always make jokes about, oh, Kenny Pickett had tiny hands. That means he'd be a terrible quarterback, whatever, because of the you fumble when you have smaller hands. No, teams just want to see how many teams in the history of football have had success with quarterbacks who have, say, 8.5-inch hands. Well, it's only, let's say it's only happened once. So if you get down to it and you're trying to parse prospects and they're really close, if they're extremely close, you're going, all right, well, what can we use to try to separate these two players where we're really, it's either or. Well, one's got bigger hands. The data set historically says, though, that's the more historically successful player in the NFL. That means the risk is it's leaning on the other player. It sounds stupid, but it really is just getting down to the tiniest little measurements when you get to a point where you just can't decide between two players. That rarely happens, but it does happen, and they loved it. Some GMs and, personnel guys like to have that extra little bit of information.
I'm talking to two reporters here, so I wonder if y'all feel me on this. The reporter in me just kind of picks up and cringes a little bit, Charles, when you say, general manager is there on Zoom. I don't need to be there. Mike, think about Don Squire, okay? I don't need to be there. I'm getting everything I need on Zoom. No. It's always better to be in the room. Something happens to your reportorial brain when you're in the same room.
To say it's an inexact science, Mike, to say it's an inexact science and then to introduce variables seems a little counterintuitive.
Okay.
Hey, and here's the other thing. In the newspaper industry, somebody in the newspaper industry is saying, all right, tell it now. When you have the resources to travel and you tell the higher ups that you don't need to travel, that's a bad precedent to set. No, we need to travel. We need to be there.
Let me give you a counter argument to that based on something that happened last year. Okay. I'm not going to say the name of the prospect because I don't want to get into it with the kid. It's fine. Like, he had a good rookie season, whatever. It's not so it's highly prized prospect, right? We're talking about a kid in the top end of the first round. He's going through interviews, right? And he was one of these prospects that happened to sit on an interview with the general manager, wasn't present, whatever. Well, when he was walking out the door, there's like a table with snacks on it, right? And he just grabbed snacks, and some people in the room were kind of off-put by it. That he was just like on his way out the door, grabbed some snacks without really saying anything, just like straight up grabbed them, and they were kind of looking at each other like, I don't know what I think about that. And it was weird. It planted this kind of negative seed. It planted a little bit of a negative seed in their head about, like, is the kid selfish? Now, see, that's it. Michael, you say, here's the funny thing. Michael, you say it's some dumb shit, right? Like, you say that. Here's the thing. If you're not in the room to see that, you don't end up processing it. It doesn't mean anything to you. And I will put it to you this way.
That's true.
The way he played as a rookie, wasn't nobody giving a shit about the potato chips that he grabbed and put out the door.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Because it's like, okay, because this is what I'm saying. It's like, if it's a breakfast buffet, right, you don't just grab a plate and make the plate. I get that, okay? Because I've been at hotels, and it's been like, oh, is that ours? That's not ours? Okay, I'm not just going to go help myself. But if it's a bunch of snacks just sitting there,
let me get these.
That's what we're there for.
Let me get these.
It's just some snacks.
And
the question is, what kind of snacks? If you want to do some scouting, what kind of snacks?
Right.
What kind? That's your scouting. Because instead of saying, oh, is he selfish? Be like, wait, he picked the M&Ms and not the Jujubes. He picked the Butterfinger and not the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Now you're scouting. So that's just more information as far as I'm concerned. The kid likes snacks.
I'm just saying, this is the type of stuff that happens here where you're surprised sometimes by what gets into the heads of evaluators when they're sitting in a room. And as Michael Holley said, they're reading body language, which I do think that's helpful. I actually do. I really do. I believe that's helpful. but I think sometimes it can go too far. Like that was one of those moments where I'm like, yeah, I kind of get it. But, really in the big grand scheme of things, does this really mean anything?
I guarantee you, whoever thought that he was being selfish, Michael, all it did was confirm something. It was confirmation bias. It was something that they probably already went into it thinking about the kid, and he did something. And they were like, see, I told you.
I think that's true. I think that's true. I think that's legitimate.
But here's the thing. This is going to happen whether there's a combine or not. Like Thomas Dimitrov has mentioned this, and other people have too. He said, when you're an evaluator, when you're an NFL evaluator, he said, we all do it. We wind up doing things. We think we can evaluate everything. We evaluate the cashier at the grocery store. We evaluate our relationships. We're evaluating everything because we just get into that mindset where we're just, we don't like that. Well, how about this? And sometimes it goes too far. So whether there's a combine or not, that process is going to happen. Let me ask you this. Charles, I'm wondering if I'm crazy, and Mike, help me out on this, because I'm looking at these Jalen Ramsey reports, and it's not necessarily about Jalen Ramsey, just the cornerback position overall. 10 years ago, I would have said, oh yeah, go get you a shutdown corner, go get him. I think there may be two guys like that in the league. I don't think Jalen Ramsey is one of them. Sauce Gardner is. I'm kind of thinking that the cornerback position, I don't want to say overrated. That overrated is overrated. But I think you can get by without a Jalen. You can win a championship without a Jalen Ramsey, Sauce Gardner, Darrelle Revis back in the day, that kind of guy. Because the league has changed, kind of devaluing that position.
Chiefs just did it.
Am I crazy? Am I crazy
Chiefs
to think
just did it. Right? The Chiefs just did it. Right? Chiefs just won a title without having a top 2-3 lockdown cornerback, right? I think we can agree on that. Has it changed? I think the metric of how you value the players. Okay, when we came in, we're all covering the NFL. One of the first things we learn is the staple positions that you pay: left tackle, shutdown cornerback, quarterback. And that's where you start, right? Those three. Yeah. Well, those three were like the building blocks, right? If you can have a cornerback who cuts the field, right? Defensive end, right? That's four, really. Yeah. Those are the four. I think now, because of where the salaries are going, teams are now trying to figure out what one of the holy quartet or two of the holy quartet can we live without paying a top, end salary. If we're the Cleveland Browns, we're going to pay Myles Garrett. We're going to pay Deshaun. That means we probably can't pay a left tackle at the very tippy top of the left tackle market. We probably can't pay a corner at the very tippy top. They just paid Denzel
Ward, didn't they? Well, not tippy top.
But I'm talking tippy top. I'm talking and Ramsey. That's the thing that Ramsey plays into this with the Rams that everybody should know. The Rams knew when this season started it was likely going to be his last, because they knew at some point he's going to want to do an extension, because Jalen Ramsey's sitting there going, wait a minute, I'm a top corner in the league. I'm an all-pro level cornerback. The all-pro level wide receivers who I am, paid to cover and erase are making $25 million a year. So what does that mean? That means I should be making $25 million a year.
Okay, but is he still? I mean, I know he got the reputation. I know he's a big name, but is he though? Ish. I don't know Jalen Ramsey. I was going to say, Michael, but the answer to this is like, it depends on who you're talking about and what team. Right. If you're the Rams,
I don't evaluate that,
and the bottom just fell out, and you've been saying F them picks, but eventually that bill's going to come due. If you got an opportunity to get another team to buy into the Jalen Ramsey mystique, then you get them to trade for Jalen Ramsey, and you start to retool and rebuild this roster, both from a salary cap standpoint and a draft pick standpoint. I like Jalen Ramsey. I think he's had a great career. I don't know if Jalen Ramsey at this point is the Jalen Ramsey that he was in Jacksonville and when he first got to the Rams, even when he was at the Rams last year.
Okay, but he may. Well, I'll say this too. We do see some guys who, especially corners, this does happen. I'll say Darius Slay is a good example. Darius Slay, when Detroit dealt him, people were like, well, is Slay really, is he that elite level corner? And then he went to Philly. Yeah. Sometimes a change of scenery reinvigorates a player.
Right. Different system too,
Yeah, different system, different coaching staff, different teammates, and they can snap back. I mean, remember, a lot of people watching this show who are young enough to not really know this, but I think Pac-Man Jones went to Cincinnati and had the best portion of his career because he really changed into a player that I think whatever it was, being there with Marvin changed how he looked at the game and focused on the game.
I did not have Pac-Man Jones on my Charles Robinson bingo card today, but that great pull, great reference. Yeah. You know who can't play regardless of system? This just crossed. The Commanders cut Carson Wentz. They saved $26 million against their cap by cutting Carson Wentz. I don't give a damn about Carson Wentz. I want to talk about the guy who seems he's gonna be the QB1 under Eric Bieniemy and that offense, and that's Sam Howell. Should we believe, and by we, I mean people who are in dynasty leagues who have Sam Howell.
Oh,
and
man.
like, you know what? I'm in Superflex leagues, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna stick with Sam Howell.
I'm like,
is this
why is he asking about
thing?
Sam Howell? You know, Charles, I should have known.
Because Gary wants to know. Because our Commanders fan producer wants to know. That's why I'm asking.
Gary don't want to know. Even Gary, even the Commanders fan doesn't want to know about Sam Howell. But Mike Smith does.
He's probably not going to be there anyway. But I mean, like, I've seen some mock drafts linked in Anthony Richardson, who I love. Like, are they really going to roll with Sam Howell, who once upon a time was going to be a top 5 pick?
Yeah, that's it. That's the crazy thing about Sam Howell to me is I first became aware of him because what do we do every year during the draft as soon as the draft's over?
Look at the next draft.
Yeah, we're like, hey, who's coming up? Like and I always ask about the quarterbacks, like who's a year out, who's 2 years out? Tell me about the next 2 quarterback drafts because every team out there is evaluating juniors whenever they go into pro days, and now some of them are even kind of taking a little peek at the sophomores because they're like, these guys will come out as juniors. So I remember Sam Howell, it was like, oh, well, this kid could be a number 1 pick. He could be a top 3 pick. He could be a top 5 pick. And then he became a 5th round pick. And I was always like, what happened? So I ended up watching him in the preseason because I was really interested. I'm like, I remember the time when this guy was it. He was going to be it. I liked him. When I watched him, I was like, I kind of like how this guy plays. Like he looked, now again, it's preseason. Right. It gets it is what it is. But I mean, I thought when he got his opportunity last year, I was kind of like, maybe this guy is better than it.
They waited
maybe
too
he's
long.
Not a top 5.
I don't know what they were waiting on.
I do not know what he is ultimately going to become. I would be surprised if they do not address quarterback in another way. You don't want to just hang everything on the Sam Howell, hopes and dreams. But I don't know that they go out and they draft another young quarterback, in this draft to compete with him unless something happens. I mean, I guess we could always see what happens with this class of guys. But I thought he was interesting. He was fun. It was the same with Drew Lock, though. There was a time where I looked at Drew Lock and I was like, wow, he's kind of interesting. Maybe he's got some tools. It would be a shocker to see him put it together. But we just watched Brock Purdy, at least, look, he won over 2 of the 3 of us over the course of this season, and he was the last pick in the draft. I don't know. Maybe there's something there to work with Sam Howell. So all of you Dynasty League drafters, Michael Smith, hang on to Sam Howell. Maybe.
I'm with Mike. I mostly don't care about Carson Wentz, but just quickly, does anybody sign him? Does anybody say, not as a starter? Anybody sign him? Hey, good backup. Okay. We can work with him.
Is he the backup?
Frank Reich. Mm-hmm. Frank Reich. One more time in Carolina now. One more time.
Now let's not like lose our Carson Wentz has talent. Okay, there's no question he has talent. He has more talent than probably most backups in the NFL. So is there a team out there that could look at him as an attractive backup? Absolutely. Do I think there's a market out there? I don't think there's a market out there for him to be a starter. I don't think there's a market out there for a team even to say, hey, we're going to bring him in and let him compete for a starting job. I think that there's a market for him to be signed, likely on like a 1-year deal, where a team says, we want to, we're going to give him a chance to come in and compete with the other quarterbacks in the roster. We want to see him. We want to evaluate him. Similar to a few years ago, what Seattle did with Geno Smith. They're like, we think he's got talent. We think he can be a supporter for our starting quarterback. Let's see if there's something there to reclaim.
I'm so glad you said that. Number one, I do think it takes a special type of person to be a backup and embrace being a backup and manage the starter and the offensive coaching staff and so on and so forth. But Geno Smith is a great example of be careful who you write off, because nobody would have seen him. Of course, he didn't write back, and nobody would have seen him coming. Last question before we let you go. the market right now belongs to Derek Carr. Like, there's no competition. It feels like, dude, pick your team. This $35 million, I realize that's Kirk Cousins' money, and I am not trying to count another man's money, okay? I'm not getting in this man's pockets. But shouldn't money be the least of his concerns right now? And shouldn't he be trying, like this long process that David referenced? It's like, dude, like, pick your team now before Aaron Rodgers eventually, sees the light and has some kind of clarity or whatever team he wants. Like, why is Derek Carr slow playing this thing?
I think he's slow playing it because of, like, when you listen to what David Carr is saying, I think it is not so much about money. I think it is like, there's a feeling like if it doesn't work, this next destination doesn't work, it's like now he's fully off track. There's a chance that he goes somewhere if he gets the right situation, plays well, and then he plays the next, 7-8 years of his career in this destination.
He goes to the Hall of Fame in New York.
Look, he could.
I'm sorry.
Look, let's put it this way, right? When Ryan Tannehill, when he got traded from Miami and he went to Tennessee, there was the right place for him to have a second life, right, in his career. Or you could be Kurt Warner and have a New York Giants stop. And then it's like, whoa, what happened?
And you're a bridge. They use you as a bridge to another guy.
And then you're a bridge, and then what do? You go to Arizona thinking you're going to end up being the backup to Matt Leinart. And, it took – so you don't want to have that middle team. You don't want that Giants experience a la Kurt Warner. You want it to be the next team is your next 8 to 10-year team for a Derek Carr.
Good to see you, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Charles.
Very soon.
Stuff, man.
Take it easy, gentlemen.
Mike, forget about franchise mode. It's all about dynasty, dude. I'm telling you.
Dynasty now, huh? Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget, you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.